So slavery's in the Bible, and isn't slavery right in some instances if you can get out and if you're like an indentured servant and you can work your way to freedom?
Okay, good. All right, now, sir, you've asked a very difficult question, a very good question. And you're going to have to do a lot of studying and a lot of thinking through this issue, especially in light of the fact that you're a black man living in a pretty white culture. Okay? First point. When Paul writes, slaves, obey your masters, he's addressing people who lived in the Roman Empire. Over 50% of people in the Roman Empire were slaves. Doctors were slaves, lawyers were slaves, business people were slaves, and all of them could buy their way out of that slavery. In fact, those slaves were really indentured servants. And it was due to economic situations that they were slaves, but they could buy their way out of that slavery. Now, other than the slaves in the Roman Empire, and please hear this loud and clear, were slaves because they were part of conquered nations. So we're totally aware of the fact that slavery in the Roman Empire had a lot to do with economics, but it also had a lot to do with conquered peoples were enslaved. Horrible. Now, Paul is coming in and he's talking to a culture with over 50% slaves, most of whom are indentured servants, but some are a result of being conquered. And he's saying, slaves, obey your masters. In other words, I'm calling you to respect your masters. But in the letter of Philemon, Paul writes to a slave owner named Philemon and says, accept your runaway slave Onesimus back no longer as a slave, but as a brother in Christ. Paul is laying the foundation for the abolition of slavery. When I begin to realize that you are my brother in Christ, how dare I enslave you? But he's not calling for Spartacus to rise up and lead a major revolution in the Roman Empire, freeing it of slaves and slavery. Now, the reason that this issue is so hard for me as a white American and you as a black American to understand is because in our culture, slavery was based on race. It was a type of racism that was pathetic. But that is not what Paul is addressing. Slavery in the Roman Empire had nothing to do with race. It had everything to do with economic station in life and whether you were part of a conquered nation. So if anybody says to you, oh, Paul and the Bible are supporting the type of slavery here in the United States that we had pathetically, they are totally wrong.